It began with a young woman in a red apron kneeling beside an old man, placing a warm bread roll in his trembling hands. She didn't ask where he came from or why his eyes looked so weary. Every morning, she simply left a meal, no questions, no conditions. But on the 11th day, everything changed. For military SUVs rolled up in perfect formation. A uniformed officer stepped out, holding a letter. The bakery fell silent, and when that woman walked out, everyone stood. Welcome to Grateful Stories, where tales of compassion and kindness are shared. Let's uncover what happened on the dusty corner of Santa Isabel, New Mexico. Each morning began with the warm, unmistakable scent wafting from Elena's bakery, nestled between an old pawn shop and a shuttered gas station. The air carried notes of melting butter, vanilla, and rising dough. Clara Mendoza, 35, had never left this town for more than a weekend. Before the sun crested the distant Oregon mountains, she was in the kitchen, rolling dough, shaping bagels, baking honey-sweet muffins, and preparing the cheddar rolls locals couldn't resist. She wasn't loud or flashy, didn't linger after shifts, but she remembered birthdays others forgot. She knew which customers liked extra sugar in their coffee and which ones needed their quiet more than small talk. And she was the only one who noticed the old man. His gray hair was matted under a worn cap, his coat frayed and dust-streaked, sitting silently on the bench by the recycling bins at 6:10 a.m. Sharp every day. He never asked for anything, just sat, shoulders slightly hunched, as if trying to fade from the world. His eyes weren't empty but watchful, alert in a way that suggested he hadn't relaxed in years. At first, Clara thought he was waiting for someone. But after 5 days, 10 days, 3 weeks, he never left the bench, never spoke, just gave a slight nod when she swept the back patio before opening. One chilly Tuesday morning, frost clinging to the windows, she stepped outside with a brown paper bag. Inside was a leftover ham sandwich, a banana muffin, and a cup of hot coffee with a tight lid. She didn't hand it to him, just placed it on the bench as she passed, muttering, "Guess the kitchen made too much today." The man glanced at the bag, then at her. His eyes didn't beg, didn't rush, just watched, cautious, as if weighing whether this was kindness or a trap. Then he nodded, a bit deeper this time. The next day, he returned. So did the bag. And just like that, it became their silent ritual. No words, no names, just a bag, a cup, and a quiet nod between strangers. She never told anyone about him. She wasn't sure why she did it. Maybe it was something her father said about the war, how children scavenged crumbs under soldiers' boots. Or maybe it was her own memory of being a hungry child in a too-quiet home after cancer took her mother. Or maybe it was simple. He was hungry, and she knew how to bake. It didn't take long for others to notice. One Wednesday, as Clara arranged fresh bagels, she overheard a whisper at the coffee counter. "He's back again," a woman muttered, just loud enough to be heard. "Clara's running a soup kitchen now," a young coworker teased, wiping down a booth. Clara didn't reply, just kept slicing loaves, each cut deliberate, each piece placed with quiet purpose. A few days later, Mr. Felix, a retired teacher who drank a double espresso daily, glanced out the window and shook his head. Back in my day, guys like that wouldn't linger around respectable shops, and no one handed out freebies just because they looked rough. Clara smiled politely, said nothing, her hands dusting flour onto the next batch of rolls. Only Alma, the elderly lottery vendor 2 blocks down, leaned in as she grabbed her drip coffee and whispered, "You've got your mama's heart. You know that?" Clara paused for a moment. Alma had known her mother, who used to make soup from leftovers and share it with strangers during cold winters. Clara couldn't recall her mother's face clearly anymore, but she remembered those hands always warm, always busy, always smelling of parsley and dish soap. That same morning, the man didn't show up. Clara still packed a bag, still brought the coffee, still placed it on the bench at 6:10. A gust of wind blew the napkin from the bag, and it fluttered across the empty lot like a small, stateless flag. She watched it drift. The next day, he didn't come. Or the next. On the 4th day, Diego, the bakery owner, called Clara into his back office. The room was small, tiled and faded linoleum, smelling of ink and burnt coffee. He didn't mince words. "Clara, I know your heart's in the right place, but customers are talking. That man's making people uncomfortable." She tightened her grip on her apron. "He's never come inside. He's never asked for anything. But you're giving him something every day," Diego said. "This isn't a charity." She stayed silent, not because she lacked words, but because speaking might make her cry. "I pay for the food myself," she finally said. "It's leftovers. It doesn't come out of inventory." Diego exhaled, rubbing his forehead. "Look, I'm not saying stop. Just don't make it obvious. Do it out back or something." Clara nodded. That night, she emptied her tip jar enough for a loaf, coffee, and a muffin each day. She slipped a few bills into a plain envelope, writing in neat handwriting, "Covers 5 days' breakfast." No one would ask to see it. No one needed to. To Clara, kindness didn't need permission, only intention. A week passed. The bench, once home to a paper bag and steaming coffee, now sat empty. For the first time in nearly 2 months, Clara prepared a breakfast with no one to receive it. Still, she packed the bag at 6:10, placed it on the bench, and watched from the window. No one came. By Saturday, a desert wind knocked the open sign sideways. Clara wrapped the untouched meal and stored it in the fridge. She couldn't throw it away, couldn't leave it out anymore. The emptiness felt too heavy. 10 days since she'd last seen him, Alma sent Clara a message with a link to a Facebook post. It was a photo of her bakery, her bench, her brown paper bag sitting untouched. The caption read, "Elena's Bakery, now feeding imaginary customers." Guess good PR matters more than good sense. The comments were harsher. "Marketing stunt. Bet she says it's for the underprivileged and tosses it. Feeding strays just makes more of them. Some people need a reality check." Clara locked her phone, didn't read further. That night, in her small apartment above the bakery, she opened the lowest drawer of her dresser, where she kept her mother's last belongings. Inside was a silver tin box, worn but clean. She unlatched it, pulling out a battered leather journal with frayed edges. Her mother's handwriting was faded but steady. "Gave half my ration today to a boy crying outside the fence. Some said I was crazy, that he could be a trap. But his eyes reminded me of myself the day my father didn't come home." No one grows poorer by sharing bread, but those who forget to share, no matter how full their tables, stay hungry in ways they'll never understand. Clara traced the final line, as if touching her mother's spirit through the page. She didn't know the man's name, where he'd gone, or if she'd see him again. But he'd been hungry, and she'd had bread. On the 11th morning, the sky was overcast, the air damp with a rare chill in Santa Isabel. Clara was wiping down the pastry case when the sound of tires on gravel made her look up. For matte black military SUVs, spotless and perfectly aligned, pulled up in front of the bakery. Their synchronized arrival silenced every voice inside. Even the espresso machine seemed to hush. Doors opened with quiet clicks, and uniformed soldiers stepped out, 2 by 2, their movements crisp. From the lead SUV emerged a tall man, his face tanned by sun and time, carrying an unshakable steadiness. His dark blue dress uniform gleamed with ribbons and medals that caught the dim light. He stepped toward the entrance, the bell chiming loudly in the silence. Everyone turned. "Is there a Clara Mendoza here?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. She stood behind the counter, hands still damp from polishing glass. "Yes," she said softly. He approached with measured steps. "I'm Lieutenant Colonel James Navarro, United States Army Special Forces. I'm here because of a promise." From his uniform's inner pocket, he pulled a sealed envelope, thick and official. "This is from Victor Salazar, the man you brought breakfast to each morning." Clara's eyes widened, her hand steadying herself on the counter. Colonel Navarro continued, "He was the father of Sergeant Luis Salazar, one of my best men. Luis was killed in action 2 months ago overseas. After that, Victor disappeared." The room grew quieter. He carried guilt more than anyone knew. But 3 months ago, he wrote to Minute about his grief, not about his son, but about you. Navarro held up the envelope. In his final letter, written days before he passed from heart failure, he asked us to find the woman in the red apron. He said you didn't ask questions, didn't offer pity, just gave him food every morning, as if he mattered. Clara couldn't speak, barely breathed. Navarro's voice thickened slightly. He wrote, "She made me feel like a person again, more than my sadness. Tell her she helped a father believe the world still had kindness left for the broken." He stepped back, came to full attention, and saluted. Every soldier outside followed, standing tall in the open air, saluting the woman behind the counter. Clara's tears fell silently. She hadn't saved a life, hadn't fought in a war, just baked a roll, poured coffee, and offered it without asking why. Yet that small act had reached a battlefield, wrapped itself around a soldier's memory, and became part of a promise kept. Word spread fast. Within 3 days, a photo of Clara behind the counter, tears in her eyes as soldiers saluted, swept the town and beyond. The local paper ran a story, the morning ritual that helped a father heal. Clara didn't change her routine, still opened at 5:30 a.m., wore the same red apron, kneaded dough with quiet focus. But the people changed. A young mother left a note. "My brother's a Marine. Thank you for remembering soldiers leave families behind." An older man placed a challenge coin beside the register, nodded, and said, "Vietnam 74. First time I believed in people again." Some came not to buy but to sit, leaving patches, medals, handwritten prayers. Veterans, widows, children each had a story, and somehow, a loaf of bread gave them permission to tell it. One morning, among the thank you cards on the wall, Clara found a letter in a child's handwriting. "Dear Miss Clara, I'm Sophia, Victor's granddaughter. We didn't know he was gone until the base called. Grandma said he always talked about you, how you gave him food when no one else saw him. We found a box under his bed with every napkin you folded, every note you left. He never threw them away. Thank you for being kind when he needed it most. Love, Sophia." Clara framed the letter, hanging it behind the counter, not for all to see, but for herself. A month later, Diego walked in early, holding a wooden sign. He mounted it beneath the bakery logo outside, dusted his hands, and left without a word. It read, "Bread for those who need it. No questions, no shame." One autumn morning, a teenage girl lingered outside, hands in her hoodie, eyes wary. "My dad's deployed," she mumbled. "My mom cries a lot. Do you still have any bread?" Clara smiled gently. "We've always got bread. And a seat, coffee, and someone to listen if you want to talk." She placed a warm roll on the table and walked away, just as she used to. That evening, while cleaning the counter, Clara found something by the flower bean, a heavy challenge coin, its inscription reading, "Semper Fidelis, never forgotten." She slipped it into her pocket, didn't ask who left it, didn't need to. Outside, the sky glowed amber, casting a soft light across the bakery's windows. Inside, the ovens hummed, and a promise made not with words but with breakfast lived on. In our darkest moments, kindness finds a way, often in the quietest places. Not everyone who helps seeks recognition. Some just need to know that today, someone isn't hungry. And sometimes, that's enough to change a life. You may forget the story, but if no one retells it, history stays silent. Subscribe to Grateful Stories, where justice is honored, kindness is remembered, and no quiet heroism is ever lost.